Welcome to another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. I'm your host, Keandra Jones. This podcast educates, ignites inspiration, fosters encouragement, and paves the way for growth among small businesses and the overall Oak Cliff community. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dallas Zoo, Home Care Network, Breakfast Brothers, and ServPro. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get into it. Today's episode is titled, He Didn't Take No for an Answer. Roland Parrish is the CEO and owner of Parrish Restaurants and the Parrish Charitable Foundation. He's also a McDonald's franchisee with 25 locations and is a successful philanthropist. I can't say that word. Let's welcome Mr. Roland Parrish. Good morning.
Hey, thank you very much, Ms. Jones. It's great to be here. I'd also like to send a shout out to the sponsors, especially the Breakfast Brothers. We do a lot with them.
Yes.
And it's a pleasure to be here and an honor. And you are most exquisitely dressed, impeccable,
Thank
as
you.
usual. And you're very coordinated.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I did not take into consideration the gray chair with my outfit today. I usually try to consider all those things, so I missed it today. But thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, no, I think it helps the accent. So you got gray on gray, and then you got like the black hair and the boots. And so I think you got it with the gold. Okay, I think you got it together.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
Well,
right.
I've been excited all over the holidays because I knew you were coming, and I've been wanting to talk to you.
Hey, I've enjoyed the Oak Cliff Chamber. I've been a member for many years, and I tell you what, once you took it off, it's just like a rocket. It's just taking off. So many good things going on.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you. I
Uh-huh.
appreciate that. And your partnership.
Mhm.
But I'm going to ask you, we're going to get to the basics here.
Sure.
Okay. So we know Roland Parrish and respect you for all of the things that you've done, but who is Roland Parrish outside of all of the things? Who are you?
You know what? I heard a question last night that was very interesting. Someone said, describe yourself like in 2025 in 5 words. And the gentleman said, like husband, father, brother, employer. And so those are the things that I am. You got the family. Then I have my business family, which is my employees. Then I have the community, which is my extended family. And so it's just a guy that grew up in Hammond and Gary, Indiana. And God has blessed me. And Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is required. And I've wake up every day trying to do our best I can and trying to help somebody, trying to make a difference. And lastly, trying to leave the world better than when I came. So that's me, hopefully in a nutshell.
Those are some powerful words. And we're going to get into some of those things that you are. But first, what are some of your hobbies? I know you're always working, but what do you do? What do you do for fun?
Okay. Well, since we sort of share, we're tenants in the same building,
Yes.
and we sort of share a garage. You can see I have some vintage old cars, and I don't have them here all the time, but I got a couple. And I guess they're probably they might be sort of muscle cars. A 57 Chevy, a 60 Corvette, and a 64 SS Impala Super Sport, and a 40th anniversary Corvette.
Wow.
And so those are some hobbies I have. Music, I've been a musician since I was 5. I started taking classical music on the piano when I was 5.
Really?
Started playing at church when I was 10, and actually played for 30 years. And my repertoire for probably my last group I played for 30 years. I've been playing since I was 10, so that's a long time in church. But we did everything from Kirk Franklin to Fred Hammond, but all the way even Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers from the 50s. So we had a long repertoire. We did rap, we did straight gospel, quartet, and everything. And so that was very satisfying.
Wow.
Very satisfying. Yeah. Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Mill Course.
Wow. Okay. So I knew about the cars because anytime I pull my little car in the garage, I know if there's a cool car in the garage, it doesn't belong to me, obviously. It belongs to you.
Thank you.
I know every time because we know all the cars in the garage.
Right.
And so when there's something cool, it's yours.
Thank you very much.
So when did you get into cars?
That's interesting when you bring it up because my father was very, he was a disciplinarian, community-minded, Baptist minister. I worked in the steel mills. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. And he had this, I guess, this ideology that books and gas don't mix. So I was unable to buy a car until I got my bachelor's degree. So when I was in high school and on campus, I walked. We call it Sam and Dave, left foot, right foot. And so I believe what happened when I get to graduate school, my father gave me some dollars to help me buy a new car. And I bought a new Buick Regal. And after that, I think because I was deprived of vehicle, I had friends who had cars at like 15 and 16 years old. I think that I've had this affinity for cars. And I love the cars from that 1955 to 1968, 70. I'm kind of dating myself, but those are the cars where you knew every year they changed the vehicle. And so I've been able to buy a couple cars in that era, the 57, the 60, and the 64. And so I think that's what happened. My father denied me the privilege of having a car during college. And my reward was with a bachelor's degree, I was able to get a car for grad school. And so I think that's what happened, Miss Jones. Right.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
very
I was
interesting.
deprived. I was deprived.
Huh. That's very interesting. So, of all the cars you have and have had, which is your favorite and why?
Okay. Probably the most favorite was that 75 Buick Regal. But currently, and I know there's a lot of adversity with these,
Mm.
I have a Hummer EV electrical vehicle. And I ordered it during COVID. It took 3 years to come.
Oh, wow.
And when it came, I went to the dealership to tell them, no, I don't want this vehicle, sell it to someone else. And I fell in love with it. And so I got it in June. I've already put 3,000 miles on it. Now that's in 6 months. So, but I just love the vehicle. I like the military feel. I've been dealing with the electronics, and it so far has not been a problem. It's a lot of fun, and it's a pickup truck. You know, I'm in Texas,
Yeah.
so it's a pickup truck. So that's the one that's my favorite right now.
That's interesting. Okay, so I think I asked you this one in the hallway.
Okay,
So, how many cars do you have?
7.
7?
Right. I'm probably one parking space short of where I need to be. So if anyone out there wants to buy, I got a real nice Escalade 2023 with only 10,000 miles on it, and it's a wrap.
It's so beautiful too.
Isn't it? Isn't it a
Oh,
great
it's
car?
so beautiful.
And it's become the
Yes.
stepchild. Can you believe that?
Oh,
Because of the Hummer.
oh my God.
I love
It's
that Hummer.
so beautiful. Yeah, I admire it in the parking lot.
I do.
It's just
Yeah.
so pretty. Would you sell that? Would you?
The Escalade.
Would
Oh
you?
yeah.
Would you?
It's just that some of the automobile people say everything's for sale. You know, I really like we're going in this direction. I've never had people ask me like in a podcast or in front of an audience about hobbies, and we gotten into cars this much. I'm enjoying this.
Oh, good.
As they say, McDonald's, I'm loving it.
No, I'm loving it.
I'm loving
Okay.
it. Hey.
You know, I think that is so important. I mean, so I think therapy is
Mhm.
super important. And
Mhm.
I think that as long as I can, I will forever have a therapist.
Mhm.
And one of the things my therapist encourages is to have and participate in regularly a hobby,
Mhm.
especially in high stress spaces and places like,
Mhm.
you know, what it is that you do. And so I think it's so important. So I'll always talk about hobbies. I love
Oh,
that.
I think that point on therapists is really good. My me time is running. I've been running since I was probably 12 years old. And so that's kind of like my time. I'm out there, I'm running, I'm clearing my head.
Mhm.
You know, we talked about music, playing music, listening to music. And so those are all things you got to reach out and enjoy life. You
Yeah.
got to grab it. You got to enjoy life and just not be a workaholic, because I know I'm borderline. I may be not borderline. I may be like fully workaholic, but I do try to enjoy life. You
Yeah.
got to enjoy life.
You have to.
You have to enjoy life.
You have to.
Mhm.
Now, music. You mentioned music. I had
Mhm.
no idea that you were a musician.
Mhm.
Had no idea. And so some of the artists that you mentioned are in our Metroplex, Kirk
Yes.
Franklin,
Mhm.
Fred Hammond.
Right. Mhm.
So do you regularly get to interact with them still?
No,
What are those relationships like?
I've spoken to Mr. Hammond a couple times. And I got a cute Kirk Franklin story. I met Mr. Franklin one time, and people were trying to. It was at a awards dinner, and people were trying to hit him up for a free concert. So finally, I got the courage and walked up. We were at the same table. We
Mm,
happened to go on the podium right behind each other, and I
mm.
said, "Mr. Franklin, would you like to hear a Kirk Franklin story?" And he pondered and he said, "Yes." And that's when I said, somewhere around 1993, 94, a friend of mine took me to a little concert at a high school.
Mhm,
And I said that the star attraction was John P. Key. He was the third act.
mhm.
So the first act was this little group from Fort Worth. They had a lot of energy. And when they were finished, I said, you know what? I really like that first act. The second act was a pretty accomplished gospel musician called Cornell Morrell, and he had a choir.
Mm.
And so when they finished, I turned to the DJ and I said, you know what? I still like the first group. And then John P. Key, he was the featured artist. Again, this was at high school, so it
Mhm,
wasn't like a massive production.
mhm.
And, John P. Key had hits and he finished. And when he finished, I said, I still like that first group from Fort Worth. And that first group from Fort Worth was Kirk Franklin. And he remembered the concert. He
Really?
says, he sat there while I was telling a story like this, and he says, I remember that concert.
Wow.
And so he remembered that's the first time. This was before any of what I've kept that first album. What is it? It's Stomp. You remember the first album?
Stomp, yes.
Yeah, I think Stomp was the first album.
I think so.
So this was before like that first album that like put him out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And just the energy, the creativity, the songs, the words. And I was just impressed with Kirk Franklin from the start.
Well, he's a phenomenal artist.
Oh, he is.
Phenomenal
Definitely.
artist. I
Hmm.
got to see him in person. I didn't have a
Hmm.
great story to tell him, but I saw him at a comedy show, actually. He and his wife,
Okay.
Tammy, and he wouldn't
Okay.
have known me. But anyway, I was like, oh my gosh. So I was starstruck.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's not hard to do for me.
Hmm.
So we're going to transition just a little bit to
Okay.
your career.
Sure.
Now, you have achieved some successes that few others have, especially
Hmm.
that look like us.
Hmm.
So let's talk about what motivated you to 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 have what 25 McDonald's?
Yes, ma'am.
It-
Uh-huh.
where did the motivation come from? How did it start? Tell us the story.
A couple points I try to make in some quick sound bites was first, I was rejected. You probably know that story because you said don't take no for an answer. So I was rejected. I never filled out a second application. I had a great elevator speech if we get into that story. And once I got in and saw that I was a good fit
Mhm.
and that I liked the McDonald's system because I was actually studying for a CPA. I knew I was going to leave corporate America. I felt I was going to have to go out on my own, hang a shingle, but I knew I was going to have something of substance because I had a family to feed.
Sure.
So the basis was I've got to feed my family.
Right.
Um, and so once I got into McDonald's and even left Houston and opened up my first restaurant in Pleasant Grove. Shout out to
Mhm.
Pleasant Grove if anybody's out there, the Grove.
Mhm.
On Juneteenth, 1989, my goal was only 3 to 5 restaurants.
Really?
It was never that I wanted to have, you know, double digit 25 restaurants. And I always said, okay, I got to build an organization. I got to run these very well. And my motto was run great, profitable restaurants with outstanding operations. That was my moniker. That's what I told my people.
Mhm.
And along the way, somewhere in the late 90s, I had 4 restaurants. So I'm in my 3 to 5.
Mhm.
And there's a book by John H. Johnson, Ebony Jet. For those out there who remember Ebony Jet, your grandma probably had Ebony Jet magazines that were 20 and 30 years old laying
Yes.
around the house.
Yeah.
And John H. Johnson, at one time, was the richest black man in America. And he said that dissatisfaction drives people to higher heights. And I had a homeboy who went to the business school, Randall Lewis, and he was sort of throwing some, I guess, shade because another classmate had 33 Taco Bells. Now, 33 Taco Bells is not worth like 25 McDonald's. Plus, he had partners, and I didn't have any partners. But it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I just said, I've got some higher mountains to climb.
Mhm.
And so that dissatisfaction drives people to higher heights. And that one phrase. And there was another incident that happened. I remember I told my family after that, that I was going to go from 4 restaurants to 6 restaurants.
Mhm.
And I thought that was big. And I had 2 announcements to make to my family, wife and 2 children.
Mhm.
And one was that McDonald's was going to allow me the opportunity to grow from 4 to 6 restaurants. So we were in a prayer circle.
Mm.
And when I said that, they did kind of like, okay, Dad, what's the second announcement?
Oh, goodness.
And our son had just got, he was a senior at DeSoto High School, and he had just got accepted to the University of North Texas.
Mhm.
And I announced that I just received a letter and he was going to be admitted to University of North Texas.
Mhm.
I mean, like the fireworks, the explosion. My daughter did backflips. It's like jumping jacks. And it's like, wow. And everybody was so excited.
Yeah.
So at that point, I decided if I grew restaurants, I wouldn't tell anybody.
Okay.
And so I didn't tell my family or friends or my classmates. Remember Randall Lewis and
Mhm.
the Taco Bell 33. I never told them
Okay.
for probably like 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
One day I'm at my alma mater, Purdue University, and I happen to be with these guys.
Mhm.
And they're talking and talking, and one of them's a trustee, so everybody's, bathing their ego. And finally, and I'm pretty just quiet. They
Mhm.
turned to me and they said, Roland, how's McDonald's? I said, it's okay.
Mhm.
This is how many restaurants you got now? Remember, I haven't said anything for 7, 8 years.
Wow.
And I remember I said 27. And I remember they did a double take.
Mm.
They did, what? But I just was quiet about it,
Mhm.
went about the business of growing restaurants, and I just didn't say anything.
So I've got a couple of questions. And so to move that way, are there any regrets in moving that way? Like kind of working, if you would, in silence, growing in silence, not telling people about your success. Would you recommend that now in retrospect?
I think some things you have to go with your beliefs.
Mhm.
And there's a gentleman, I don't know if you've heard of, he was a former NBA basketball player. And
Mm.
they joke about he was an average NBA basketball player, but he's a great businessman.
Mm.
His name is Ulysses Junior Bridgman, and he owns something like 160 Wendy's and 30 Chili's. He
Wow.
has this, and his family owns a Coca-Cola distributorship
Wow.
in the Midwest,
Uh-huh.
and he actually owns the creative, like the pictures and everything's from Ebony and Jet. And so
Really?
he's a very accomplished businessman. But we're
Mhm.
from the same community, Hammond and Gary, in Chicago, and our
Mhm.
families have intertwined in marriage.
Mhm.
And we were athletes in high school, and he went to Louisville on the basketball, went to Purdue on track. But he was in Sports Illustrated as a sophomore,
Mhm.
and our families knew each other. And I remember his sister said, they call him Junior Bridgman,
Uh-huh.
said, Junior was in Sports Illustrated and he didn't tell anybody.
Mhm.
And I thought that was the achievement. He made Sports Illustrated. He was on national TV. Louisville played UCLA his senior year, and Pete Turkovich was his teammate in high school. And he was, he was on television. And I said, you know what? It'd be great to achieve, but then let somebody else brag about it. And so my motto has been, so you have to do what you're comfortable with. Some people, one of my heroes, Muhammad Ali,
Mhm.
he was braggadocious
Yeah.
and he could back it up.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy, reading and looking at documentaries on Ali, but I am not Ali.
Yeah.
And so I bought into the Junior Bridgman achieve, but let somebody else
Yeah.
talk about it.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with that. Whereas that wouldn't have worked for Ali.
No.
And who just excites me when I talk about Ali. So I think a person has to do what they're comfortable with.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I was able to meet Junior Bridgman a couple years ago.
Mhm.
We took some pictures. He surprisingly remembered me from high school. And I remember I went out to the parking lot because he was taking pictures with a lot of people. And I came back and I said, you know what, I got to tell you this Junior Bridgman story. And he appreciated it.
Mm.
And this guy is very accomplished. I remember he was taking so many pictures with people. And they said he lives in Los Angeles, and this was in Vegas. And one of the guys said, you might miss your flight. And he said, the pilot is not going to leave without me, which meant he had his own personal plane. But he didn't brag about it. He just said, the pilot's not going to leave without me. And he said it's so low profile. But I think he appreciated that story.
Yeah. I think that social media has changed everyday life. And when you talk about not being braggadocious, not or allowing other people to speak well of you, which is biblical, of course. What do you think about how or this environment of self-promotion, especially as it relates to business? Do you think it's necessary to market your business, or do you think that we still need to allow other people to sell our business for us?
I will probably say a combination. One, you got to adapt to change. You
Yeah.
just got to adapt to change. That's why everyone has a shelf life.
Yeah.
And I do know I've continued to adapt. Like, this is very small, but when we opened in 1989, we had one computer and no cameras. When we open a restaurant now, just to make hamburgers, we probably have 20 computers in our restaurant.
Oh, wow.
In the kitchen. It's very technical. And we have plus 30 cameras because of potential lawsuits.
Sure.
And so you have to continue to adapt. And so I just always tell the young people, be aware of change,
Yeah.
be aware of innovation,
Yeah.
because you're going to have to constantly change.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say my method of non-promotion. Plus, like, now the thing is, I would promote and try to be, I'm going to say, different. You got to have the quality product with the consumer. And we would do small things. For instance, if I ever was on the drive-through, the speaker for drive-through, I would say, welcome to the world's most famous McDonald's. So that was borrowed from Muhammad Ali. And would you like a cool, cold, refreshing glass of ice cold Coca-Cola? So, I had little rhymes and things I would say if I was on drive-through speaker. And then on front counter, and this was back in the days when businessmen would come in, they'd have on ties. And I would, guy come in with a tie, and I'd say to one of my employees, hey, James, that has to be the sharpest tie we've seen today. Or, ma'am, that is a really nice dress.
Yeah.
And then 3 minutes later, when they're gone and another customer comes, hey, James, look at this tie. It has to be the best. So I do believe in some pizzazz and some spark and some self-promotion. But it's really not about me, but it's, am I doing things to promote the business?
Okay.
So I do believe in pizzazz and Muhammad Ali's braggadocious. It's only in those really achievement type things where I could see where it could be perceived as tremendous ego that I manage that. But no, I believe in promoting the business. You got to promote it.
Yeah.
You got to promote it.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed.
But you got to have that quality product.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to have a quality product.
That's right. And so there was someone, one of our stakeholders that was in our office and asked me about you. And I said, he's in our building. Mr. Parrish is in our building. I said, we'll see him at any given time. And these are, he's got some amazing vehicles in our garage. And she happened to be in the office. Her name is Donna Miller. She happened to be in the office one day, and I said, there's Mr. Parrish right there.
Okay. Hope I was dressed okay that day.
You were perfect.
You see me like in gym shoes and a baseball hat and, we're kind of scroungy.
You were perfect.
Okay.
But the thing that stood out and always stands out about you so much is your humility. And you get out of these phenomenal cars, you come into this building, you've got all of these things going for you, but yet you can tell by your demeanor that you're just the most humble, down to earth, approachable kind of person. And we appreciate that. Most people wouldn't even know, because God knows who to give what to, because I would probably be acting crazy, if I had all the stuff going on that you've got going on. So I just want to say we appreciate the fact that you're approachable, and I can go up to you at the taco place downstairs and ask you how many cars you got.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. And so she got the opportunity to see you walk in that humility that day, whether you knew it or not. So
yeah, and I was trying to think, there's a word from the Bible. I can't think of it right now, but it's basically he who promotes himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be promoted. But
That's right.
promoted is not the right word. But anyway, it's from the Bible. Oh, he who humbles himself, he who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. I've got this one thing, even if I'm the main speaker, even like today, and we have about 5 people here, I sit in the back and I wait until I'm asked to come up front versus, oh, I'm the main guy today. I'm just going to walk up front. And so that's one of mine is try to be humble, and you're probably going to get exalted versus come in exalted. Because I've had those times where ego got in the way,
Yeah.
and I've been humbled. I've been asked to move and sit somewhere else.
Yeah.
So those things have happened. Another thing is I think you have to be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah.
And I know my role. I'm a small businessman, a very, very proud small businessman in the community. I feel I'm successful. I've done things in the community. And I see you kind of frowned on that small.
Yeah,
So
I don't.
everything is relative. Okay, everything is relative.
Sure.
But I'm very comfortable with this role. I'm comfortable with the fact that I'm in the state of Texas. I'm in North Texas. I'm in DFW.
Yeah.
I'm in Dallas. I'm ingrained in the southern sector. I mean, God sent me to me in Pleasant Grove. And so I'm really comfortable with myself and what the doors that God has opened.
Yeah.
So I'm really comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I'm really comfortable with that.
And we're going to talk about your philanthropy here in just a second, but I have to go back just a little bit and let's talk about your no story. That kind of crossroad. What happened and who would tell you no and why?
Right. And I really, this is two points on this one is to be humble and the elevator speech. So when I was graduated from school, got an MBA from Purdue, and then I worked for Exxon Company. And Exxon, of all the things that they have, it was the largest company in the 70s and 80s in the world. But I had to work service stations. So I had to work full service. And some people remember when you had an attendant and you drove up and they pumped the gas. And so I had to work, and there were 6 steps around the car. And I basically then learned how to run service stations. Some people out there who I guess older or legacy may remember we had gas rationing. We had gas shortages. OPEC had come into being, the petroleum conglomerate, I guess, consortium of the nations that began to control pricing of oil. And so gasoline shot up from something like less than 50 cents a gallon to over $1 a gallon in a short period of time. And there was gas rationing. And so fast forward, again, remember, I was humble. I had an MBA, but I ran a service station in Lehigh, Arkansas. I ran service stations in Jackson, Mississippi. And so I was, fast forward a couple of years later, I know I was going to leave corporate America, and I was working on a CPA. And I was not an accountant, but I had friends who had started accounting practices in Houston. And I felt that I could work for them at night and on the weekends, pass the exam, build up a clientele, and then move away from corporate America. But remember, I had a family to feed. So I was going to have to do double duty, work for Exxon to feed the family, study for the CPA, build a practice, and when it was appropriate time, leave corporate America. And I happened to see a friend who had an application come on McDonald's franchisee, had 8 pages. And I called, I filled it out. And the short story was I was rejected. And the name at the bottom was Ruth Anderson. That letter is in my office hanging right now, the rejection letter. And I would call every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when I got to my office at Exxon and ask for Ruth Anderson, the corporate office in Houston, Texas. And she was always out. She was always out. And so 2 months, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it was probably like 10 o'clock, I would call Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 o'clock. And the lady said, just one moment. And wow, she's coming to the phone. So I asked her, were there any, I told her I had a couple college degrees and, I felt I was a winner in life. And she said, well, degrees don't really fit well in McDonald's. And at that time, of their CEOs, they probably had 4 CEOs. The company started in 1955. None of them had a college degree. So they had chief executive officers who didn't have college degrees. Then I said, do you have any minority programs? And she says, no, we don't have any minority programs. So I was like, strike two. And so for some reason, I started talking about service stations. And if you think about it, a service station is a retail entity,
Mhm.
and a restaurant is a retail entity that they sit in the community.
Mhm.
They have some commonalities.
Hmm.
Back then, you waited on customers. When they drove in, you waited on them, just like the front counter at a McDonald's. You had restrooms to clean. You had time clocks. You had uniforms, landscaping.
Mhm.
They have oil in restaurants that you have to clean. Cars drip oil,
Mhm.
kind of a different oil that you have to clean off the driveway.
Right.
And so I started talking about service stations, and she didn't cut me off. And one thing I found out later, we had 6 steps around the car. You greet the customer. You wanted them, find out what kind of gas they want. You did the windshield, you did the tail lights, the headlights. You want them to pop their hood because you want to try to sell them some oil. And we had 6 steps around the car. McDonald's had 6 steps at front counter. So I didn't realize I was telling her that I knew what's called direct retail, which is selling direct retail to a customer one-on-one. And so I wasn't in the program, but she says, we're going to continue the application process. And so it took 9 months to get in the 2-year program where you work 2 years free, not minimum wage, 2 years free in a McDonald's restaurant to learn the system and the culture. And so with the 2 years and the 9 months of the application process, and I would have to say that had to be the best elevator speech I ever gave.
Wow.
I didn't realize I was giving an elevator speech.
Mhm.
And so we were then offered the opportunity to move from Houston to Dallas, Texas, and open in Pleasant Grove. So that was almost a 3-year process from filling out the application
Mhm.
to actually opening the restaurant. And I'm so glad that that guy, who was probably about 35, had the drive, the ambition to go up against a Fortune 500 company.
Mhm.
And as you mentioned earlier, not accept no
Yeah.
for an answer.
Wow.
So that's that story. I hope I didn't get too long in it,
No,
but
I
that
love
was
that.
and Ruth Anderson was her name. And the
Wow.
letters upstairs,
Wow.
framed in my office.
Good for you.
So you talk about being humble. I mean, just that was, and I do think that that's part of God's plan.
Yeah. Wow.
He wanted to plant me in Pleasant Grove, and I couldn't get to Pleasant Grove without McDonald's.
My goodness, what an amazing story.
Thank you.
That is
Thank you.
amazing. So from there, you've grown into having at one time 27
Yeah, one time 27. Right.
27
Mhm.
McDonald's. And it has allowed you to be this phenomenal philanthropist in our community.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us about some of the things and we know that you're not going to be boastful or brag,
Mhm.
but we know that you're in our community doing things even though you don't like to talk about it.
Mhm.
So we already know. But I
Right.
want you to tell us
Mhm.
some of the things that you've had your hands in. In fact, I got to witness you give $50,000 away the other day. Um,
I got to think about where it was.
And so that for that to be the
Oh, I
response,
think I know where it was. Right.
for that to be the
I think I know where it
response,
was.
speaks volumes.
Yeah.
What are
Okay.
some of the things you've done in our wonderful southern sector? Talk about that.
Okay. Well, the first thing, I mean, when you get in McDonald's, when you open, so remember I had that 3-year training,
Yes.
and I finally had to open. I mean, had the opportunity to open in Pleasant Grove. And so you're supposed to give away $500 to a charity. And that was going to be tough. But I just scraped together and gave to a YMCA. And so we did the typical things that you do. You give to the basketball teams, the football teams. And there were some great teams that came through. I mean, when Lincoln's Chris Bosh team won the national championship. And so there were some great teams. And Coach Reginald Samples, I've been with a sponsor with him from Lincoln to Skyline to Duncanville. Some great football and basketball programs, cheerleading programs. We did a chess tournament a couple times, and but Dr. Harry Robinson with the African American Museum came to me somewhere around 2010. So I've been in business over 20 years, and he has a event called the Black Sports Hall of Fame, which is metropolitan-wide, but it's really statewide. And the Fortune 5 company had walked away. I think it was PepsiCo, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Frito-Lay. Someone had walked away, his corporate sponsor, and he was he was almost in panic mode. And remember, I'm a guy, and at that time, I might have had 10 restaurants, but I'm not like a Kentucky Fried or somebody, I mean, PepsiCo. So he cut a deal, sort of a payment plan, and that was my first, I'm gonna say, city or metroplex wide promotion.
Mhm.
And I remember I would run into people and they would say, "Oh, you're the McDonald's guy who got me in the Sports Hall of Fame."
Wow.
And so, with the basis of the Ray Kroc, with the basis of Dr. Harry Robinson beginning to get me to reach outside of just Pleasant Grove, and then from the Bible too, much is given, much is required, Luke 12:48, I began to see I could give away, but like within a budget. And a guy named Reginald Jones had sent a Polaroid picture. I don't know if you remember what a Polaroid was. He gave away 5 bicycles at Christmas. And I thought that was so cool. And Reginald eventually got up to 500 bikes at
Wow.
Christmas. And so we started a bike giveaway somewhere around 2003, started with 25.
Okay.
And we eventually got up to 350. And so I know we've given over like 3 or 4,000 bikes and a Bible and a helmet. And we've done it at typically some of the mega churches. We've most recently Antioch with Pastor Kerry Wesley and then his son Chris Wesley, where we either have a program and give away the bikes, or we've done the drive-through where you come in, pick up your Bible, your helmet, and your bike because of COVID.
Okay.
And so some of the things, the thing I'm probably most proud of right now that we've done is somewhere around 2017, we entered a partnership. Well, not a partnership. We joined Peter Brodsky with the Redbird Project. And so I proudly say I'm the number 2 investor in the community or just in the Redbird Project. Very proud of that. And we haven't turned a corner, but if you look at the Starbucks down there, it's one of the top 10 Starbucks in the nation.
Yes.
One of your sponsors, the Breakfast Brothers. I mean, it's hard to find a parking space.
Yes.
Sometimes in our meetings, we sat and talked about, do we need to reconfigure the parking place? Because the Breakfast Brothers are really doing well. And then there's another one out there. Oh, the sporting goods company. It's one of the top 10 in the nation. Foot Locker. It's one of the top. And so we've got some really good retail going on. And you notice those are outside. You know, we've got the mixed use development. And probably the biggest key, we listen to the community. We have 200,000 square foot of clinical medical space with UT Southwest 150 and with Parkland Hospital with 50,000 square foot, like right there in the community. So people don't have to drive downtown or further to go to seek medical attention.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of that one. Fort Oak Cliff, Teletorrens and Xavier, I'm really proud of what they're doing in that community. And we're so proud of the swimming pool. And you probably know the swimming pool was, it was non-existent. It was just there as an empty kind of cesspool. And on my first visit there, after the purpose of the meeting was done, I said, "Hey, what's up with the swimming pool?" And so we sat down and we crafted where at this point, it's about 4 years in. And not only is the swimming pool, but the teenagers can get trained to be lifeguards. We put in enough money that it's then can be their summer job. So the big kids can be the lifeguards, trained, qualified lifeguards with a summer job, and the little kids can swim.
Awesome.
And so it's a comprehensive swimming program. And we're looking at doing some further expansion there. So those are some of the things that we do in the community. And again, sometimes I have to try to remember what we do. I got a sheet with all the logos on it that I think about. It's St. Philip's. We're part of their Destiny, which is a fundraiser that I tell you what, the last 4 times I think we've raised over $1 million on that day.
Wow.
With people like Shaquille O'Neal, LL Cool J. And so what we've done is we've endowed the speaker series to help bring in top-notch speakers. Cicely Tyson was when we first got engaged. And so it's been a great fundraiser and just a great day. I mean, that's just a great day for folks to come out and celebrate with St. Philip's. One thing I give is a shout out to St. Philip's and Dr. Flowers. 100% of their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade graduate from high school, and 94% graduate from college. Aren't those great stats?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, those are great stats.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So we're proud to be engaged for many years with St. Philip's.
My goodness. So I didn't realize that you had your hands in all of those things. I knew about some of them,
Mhm.
especially the partnership here at Redbird, and I'm in that Starbucks line every morning,
Oh, wow. Great.
shamefully.
Oh, no. Proudly.
Wow.
Proudly.
I am there
Mhm.
between 5:30-ish.
Wow.
Maybe 6 on a later day, but
Uh-huh.
I'm there every doggone morning.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
you should say proudly there, not shamelessly. It's like, hey, you go up in the morning. I mean, how many people are turning over? How many people are just going to bed because they party? So, no, that shows ambition and drive
Goodness.
and dedication to one of the businesses in our community.
So,
So, hey.
love our Redbird
Mhm.
area. I love our community, and I can tell that you do too.
Mhm.
But I know that you would not be able to be Mr. Roland Parrish without your family.
Mhm.
And I had the pleasure of meeting your wife. Now, I don't recall the event.
Mhm.
I really don't. And it's been some years ago. Miss Jewel has just this personality.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, I don't remember what I was going through that day, but I was feeling really low.
Mhm.
And I did not want to be where I was. But sometimes we just got to show up. And
Sure.
I did. And your wife embraced me. She didn't even know who I was.
Mhm.
And the way that she did it was just, there was just so much love. I didn't know she was your wife,
Mhm.
and later on I found out that she was. You have such a beautiful, spirited wife.
Mhm.
And I know that it's because of your family's support that you're able to do some
Mhm.
of the things that you do. So I just wanted to say I've had the pleasure of meeting her. I don't know her well. She gave me her number that day.
Mhm.
Didn't know me from Adam, probably still doesn't, but
Mhm.
I just thought, what a wonderful person. Just a
Mhm.
person.
Yeah, one thing I want to say, Miss Jones, is maybe two things. One, yeah, she has a great personality. She's a great people person,
Mm.
and it's kind of like she's always on. Whereas I'm pretty pretty quiet. I have to flip the switch. Like this morning, I flipped the switch,
Yeah.
and so more personality. The other thing is for entrepreneurs out there, people in business,
Mhm.
because I know that's what the Oak Cliff organization is about. And when I wasn't okay, you have 17, 18, 19-hour days
Yeah.
that you're working.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, even though I'm living at home, I'm daddy, um, she had to be mom and dad.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I tried to break away so I could go to the activities that the children had.
Yeah.
And we have conversation now. They pretty much, I think, have forgiven me and understand why I was working really, really hard.
Yeah.
Are they able to see the benefits now? But she took that role whenever she had to.
Yeah.
And a story I got to tell one time was, this is could be tear jerking. So McDonald's execs had visited me, and they were sitting at my restaurant. I had one restaurant, Pleasant Grove,
Mhm.
and we had these bevel windows we were so proud of that
Mhm.
you're sitting and you're in the restaurant, but they were beveled, and you almost feel like you're sitting in the parking lot.
Mhm.
And I called my wife, and I needed her to bring me a toolkit. And I remember, so my daughter, our second child, was born like 5 months before we opened. So all she knows is McDonald's. That's all she knows is Daddy McDonald's. And so I remember my wife pulled up, and it wasn't for show. But I remember she gets out, she's holding this baby, our child, who's like probably 6 months old.
Mhm.
And in her other hand, she's got my toolkit, and she's walking across the parking lot. I got these corporate execs from McDonald's from Chicago.
Mhm.
I'm sitting there with my apron on,
Mhm.
and they saw, hey man, this guy's dedicated.
Mhm.
His wife's, I got up, to obviously get the toolkit and help her. And so, but for the entrepreneurs, just for them to realize you have family, do your best to be there.
Yeah.
I remember telling employees, there was an employee of mine, her name was Felicia Bibles. Um, she started with me as a teenager and she worked up to be a general manager, which is a pretty good job, a general manager.
Mm.
Then she had children. And I remember when her daughters was a cheerleader at Frederick Douglass Elementary School.
Mm.
And so a couple months later, I said, well, have you gone to any of the events to see your daughter cheer?
Mm.
She says, no, I've been too busy at the restaurant.
Mm.
And I'm in a meeting with all my GMs. And at that time, I might have had 10 restaurants.
Oh.
I said, Felicia, you make your own schedule. I said, on the days your daughter cheers, split your schedule. If she's going to cheer from 4 to 5 in a football game, do 4 hours, take yourself off the schedule, go watch your daughter cheerlead, and then come back.
That's right.
And, you got to go see your daughter. You got to go see her. So, family is important.
Yeah.
And there was one time when McDonald's was interviewing a lot of my general managers. And I thought they might say, well, Roland is a shrewd businessman. But everyone came back to, we have a family atmosphere.
Mm.
And at first, I thought about this, man, I thought I was a dynamic businessman. But when I look at it now, they said it's like family.
That's a great compliment.
And one of my pillars for leadership is respect and trust. So it's like a mathematical equation.
Mm-hmm.
If my employees respect me and trust me,
Mm-hmm.
I can influence them to do the right thing when I'm not around.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is leadership. I don't have to bark at them and say, I'm about to leave. I want you to run this so-and-so restaurant this way.
Yeah.
It's respect and trust. I can go to Felicia, who I've told, take yourself off the schedule and make sure you go see your daughter cheerlead. So if I walk out of her restaurant and say, look, Felicia, I'm leaving for the day, she's going to run that restaurant correctly. I don't have to bark at her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to yell at her.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that family atmosphere, that's what my people would say. That's what we have.
Wow. That is an amazing accomplishment, compliment, all of the things. So kudos to you. So, Mr. Parrish, you've done so much in your career. Give me your top 2 proudest moments.
Now I mentioned from a business standpoint, I haven't mentioned this. I talked about Redbird. That's probably the most proudest thing in Fort Oak Cliff and things I've done in the community.
Mm-hmm.
From a business standpoint, and remember that rejection letter I talked about?
Yes.
In McDonald land, and you could only achieve this one time, they have an award they call the Fred Turner Award.
Okay.
And Fred Turner was very instrumental in McDonald's in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the top 1% of the franchisees in the world. And if you're rated within the top 1%, and you could only get it one time.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2020, we achieved that, the Fred Turner Award,
Mm-hmm.
which in my mind meant we were world champions
Mm-hmm.
because there's around 3,000 franchisees in the world, McDonald's. So that means you're in the top 30. And so I remember for a whole year, everything I got was when Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali won the world championship, heavyweight championship against Sonny Liston. He said, we shocked the world. We shocked the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my thing. We shocked the world because I've gone from, and I haven't framed the letters together yet,
Mm-hmm.
but my reject letter and then my letter of notification that I was a Fred Turner winner
Mm-hmm.
will be double matted
Mm-hmm.
together. And so that's my proudest moment as a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I look at it, I think in the end I've been a good dad,
Mm-hmm.
husband and granddad. So it's the family. Haven't been perfect. A guy told me recently, you're not perfect, but you're human.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been perfect, but I'm human. And I think that trying to set my children and grandchildren up for success and make sure that my wife is comfortable
Mm-hmm.
is probably the other. And you could flip them one, and that's not 1, 1 and 2 or 2 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
So those things, but we shocked the world and that I've been a good dad.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Parrish, we really appreciate you for
Mhm.
all that you do for us,
Mhm.
our community. We look up to you. I love to see you coming in. I love to see what car
Okay.
you're driving that
Uh-huh.
day. I love to see how you humbly walk up and down these halls.
Mhm.
And so it's just such an honor to be able to watch you in
Mhm.
all of your splendor. So
Thank you. Thank you,
thank
Ms.
you.
Jones.
I
Thank you very much.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So before we leave, it is becoming more and more of our custom
Mhm.
for me to allow each of our guests to ask me one question before you leave. So anything you'd like to ask away.
Yeah. Within my means, just tell me, is there anything that I could do to help you and the Oak Cliff Chamber under your leadership um, for 2025?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for that question. Mr. Parrish, you have been very generous to
Mhm.
our organization, and we thank you for that.
Mhm.
Sincerely, I thank you for everything that you've done for our organization. We have a lot of different programs as well that we try to support. Our community. We've got a workforce development program. I've
Mhm.
got 50-ish students in that program right now. So there's still lots of needs. So
Mhm.
there's yes to
Mhm.
answer the question, but I don't want to make it sound as though you haven't already been generous because
Okay.
you have.
Okay.
So let's sit down and talk about how we can further partner because
Mhm.
we'd love that,
Mhm.
especially with our students in the workforce program. As you know, that this program caters to some of the more impoverished areas in our
Mhm.
community, and we upskill them and get them employment opportunities.
Mhm.
So we also have a business university where we're doing the same for entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So I would love to partner with you on those programs.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for being here. Will you come
Mhm.
back and talk to us sometime?
Anytime.
Okay.
Anytime. Yeah, this has been great. It took off in a direction that I did not anticipate today.
Good. Good.
Okay.
Good. Good.
All right.
That's the chamber we are.
Oh, no, that's
Expect the
outstanding.
unexpected.
Okay. Oh, no, that was great.
I'm your host, Keandra Jones. And again, thank you for watching another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. We'll see you next time.